Okay, we are back. We are so back.
We're so back.
We are the backest we've ever been. This is Tankie Group Therapy, episode, I don't know which one. It's been a few months. I've missed you guys. Uh, I mean, we're still in daily communication, but I've missed this. We have a lot to catch up on. Louis, it's been a while since you've done an episode too, and Mikey is on his way. Here he comes. There's Mikey. So we have a lot. We have a lot to go over. Let's start with Nora. How
Oh
are you doing?
God, it's still terrible. I don't know. Yeah, just before we started recording, I asked Louis how he was, and you know, he was like, "I don't know how to answer that anymore." And I think that's pretty uh, much a common refrain from all of us. Um, I mean, I don't know. There was this like very naive part of me that thought that there was going to be, when the ceasefire finally came, that there would be some sort of change in all of our moods. That because of course, obviously, Israel was going to stick by the terms that it had signed, because that's just something that you know states do when they sign a ceasefire. And of course, that hasn't happened, and Israel has violated every single term of the ceasefire that it had agreed to. And it's constantly moving the goalposts, and it's bombing Syria. And now the US is bombing Lebanon, for daring to, you know, uh, intervene in the ongoing genocide and the blockade. I mean, this is what, day 15 of the reinstated blockade of Gaza, and the world is just watching and letting it happen, and people are starving again. Medications aren't getting through. I spoke to a doctor over the weekend who was like, "Yeah, we just, we're just making do again after a year and a half of genocide, and a very slow trickle of humanitarian aid since January 19th up until 15 days ago, and now it's just back to zero, back to children being massacred in Gaza again. I mean, 9 people were killed yesterday in a series of drone strikes, and Israel admitted it and bragged about it and said, there was some like unauthorized flying of a drone, and that, these quote unquote terrorists were eliminated. And these were journalists filming, like a mutual aid thing around Ramadan, making sure people were getting fed. And there was that video of Israeli quadcopter drones inside a mosque. I think it was in Rafah. I can't remember exactly. This was just a few days ago. So people were inside the mosque because it's Ramadan, and and Israeli drones swarmed inside and outside the mosque, and were just like, I'm just like, what the hell are we watching? How is this still going on? Thinking back to what our comrade Nick Estes was saying on a recent podcast of the Red Nation, where like, yeah, like, like the US and all empires consistently break treaties that they insist that their, occupied or colonized population have to sign and adhere to. Meanwhile, the occupier, the empirical force, gets to do whatever the hell it wants all the time, anytime. And so I don't know, like I'm just there's there's a lot of anger and just like exhaustion, that I'm feeling. Also here in the belly of the beast in the US, of course, there's the Gestapo, the American Gestapo, is going around and trying to revoke green cards for having a political opinion. You know, I'm always worried that that the cops are gonna, you know, come for us. And but at the same time, like, what, you know, it is the greatest honor of my life to do this work on behalf of Palestine. And um, I, you know, I know that I'm not gonna back down or shut up or censor myself, and I think we just have to be louder and we have to be stronger. And this is the fight that that has chosen us. And you know, I don't know. I'm just kind of like, ugh, everything all at once is terrible. And also, this is the moment that we have to keep ourselves together.
Thank you, Nora. That's a good kind of, you broke the ice for us. I appreciate that. We have to get the rust off. It's been a while since we've been
Yeah,
on.
I'm talking about my feelings. It's been a
I
while.
know it's been a while. How you doing, man? This you we haven't seen you in ages on this.
Yeah, and just a series of horrendous things have happened in the gap. I'm not sure how many months it is, but as always, Nora, I completely agree and feel very much what you said. Um, I want to, as I said before we started recording, I definitely want to. I was going to say vent, but maybe more rant about Syria. But there's something else that's on my mind a little bit that kind of feels relevant. Um, I went to a funeral 2 days ago. Someone I hadn't known that long, but had gotten very close to. Um, and one of the, especially early on, one of the ways we had really connected was through our shared kind of pain and outrage about Gaza. And also our kind of sense of alienation from many of our peers for their silence or indifference. And I actually spoke at this funeral as well, and it was an unbelievably beautiful, moving service that was a celebration of an amazing life cut far too short. It was very calm. It was very perfectly appropriate and considered for the person that they were. And there was something, you know, as is often the way, very powerful about the shared grief and the connection with friends and family being together. And it was a really dignified, beautiful, obviously sad, but beautiful day. And after I spoke, I sat down and I just had this kind of rush feeling, because I mentioned Palestine in what I said because it was one of the ways in which me and this person had connected. And it just kind of dawned on me that so many thousands of people, you know, who have survived the genocide have been robbed of the ability to mourn in that way, in a calm, composed, deserving way of, you know, the tens of thousands of people who have been killed. And just the inability, you know, even from afar, I think there's many things that we haven't even been able to process or mourn because the next awful thing has already happened or the next person has been killed. But to be in the midst of it, just the grief and the pain that is being stored up and not really being able to, because, you know, obviously a funeral is, the pain is still there, but it really does help. And it really does aid the process of grief and healing. And I was just really struck sitting there in the service was still going on. I was still listening, but my mind did wander a little bit, just thinking, so many people have been robbed of this. And I think it relates as well to this feeling I've had whenever like bad things have happened in my life. I often feel those things in a kind of political way that it makes me think about people who are in a much less fortunate position still going through everyday things, whether it's the death of a parent, whether it's, whatever it may be, that stuff still happens in the worst of circumstances. And it's just very painful to reflect on. But it was a beautiful service. And then maybe slightly moving away from those feelings, I have been feeling absolute rage about Syria. Real rage. I really choose that word on purpose. And I think in some ways it's a culmination of anger I've been feeling for more than a decade. And just the sheer shamelessness of people. And I suppose what I mean by that is that whether I'm talking about, paid despicable propagandists who've been tasked with the media arm of destroying Syria over the last, I keep saying decade, but it's not even decade, it's almost 15 years. I don't even really want to say their names, but, the likes of Charles Lister, people like that, people who's, literally your job is English media propaganda for the destruction of Syria and for Al-Qaeda and related groups. But then I also feel absolute disdain and anger to those kind of supposed radicals who, even to use the most pertinent example, even in December, supposedly serious people were, for example, retweeting the most blatantly untrue things about Sednaya prison. That there's a city of 50,000 prisoners below the prison and they've lost the keys. And when the Assad guards left, they broke all the doors and they're running out of air. You had supposedly serious people who would consider themselves anti-imperialist, decolonial, however they want to call it, sharing the most blatant agitprop you could ever imagine. Fast forward 3 months, everything we knew was going to happen has happened, probably faster and worse. And they are fucking silent. And still, especially I'm thinking of a few academics now, still tweeting their stuff about their projects and anti-colonial this and, I'm building an archive of anti-colonial whatever. You were sharing propaganda that destroyed a country 3 months ago. And you're just acting like we can't fucking see you. And it just, and in terms of if anyone's wondering, maybe not so clued up on the significance of what's happened and what's happening, shameless plug, although it's more because of Patrick than me. I interviewed Patrick Higgins, written interview a couple of weeks ago, which if you want to get a handle on the strategic and historic significance of this, I would really recommend. But obviously since then it's got even worse. The massacres have become exponentially worse. I even remember people during that period in December, it wasn't enough to basically people were tweeting, look out for who's not celebrating this. They don't care about Syrians. I remember 2 or 3 tweets from again, supposed allies, look who's not happy about this. That tells you everything they need to know. And now they're not saying a word about the horrors that are happening. And and this kind of, I spoke about this a little bit with Patrick, this kind of, let's see how Jolani does. Let's give him a chance. The new government, let's see what happens. It's as if we don't know exactly who he is, what he's going to do, what he's saying he's going to do, basically, and everyone knows. This kind of willful, pretend, weird optimism to console their own soul, I think. And you've got some people now, obviously, who are supported this for 10 years now saying, no, but this is bad. And trying to portray the massacres on the coast as somehow divorced from the government, as if it's not I don't even really want to use the word government, the coup regime that has taken over. And it's just painful. And I say this, I'm hesitant to even qualify it because it's painful just as a human. But I'm speaking as someone who lived in Syria previously, had one of the happiest, best periods of my life living there. Unbelievable, unforgettable experiences in so many ways. And, I'm very careful to not portray, to rose tinted glasses as if everything was fine and there were no problems. But there was an unbelievably precious and special religious tolerance and mixing that unfortunately has probably been destroyed, at least for a generation. And, I didn't know how lucky I was at the time when I was living there, which is in 2009 mainly. But I have so many memories that I think back on, and they're just they're very painful to reflect on now. And it's really also been painful over a long period of time that anyone who wants to go against the imperialist narrative they're the ones who are shamed as supposedly being heartless. And that's been difficult to take at times over the years. But my biggest regret actually is that, to some extent, not entirely, but to some extent, I allowed that campaign to scare me a little bit. And I just wish I had spoken out more clearly, more adamantly, and earlier than I did. And as we've discussed together before, and several other people I know feel the same way. It's Syria, and everything that happened has been a really, really painful but educational process about the way things actually are. And who, lots of people I thought were genuine allies are far from. And that's just being borne out more and more and more. I could go on about Syria indefinitely. And I just want to say as well, one thing that also gets me is you have, again, leftist publishers like Pluto Press and others who at key moments published absolute dirt that, if it wasn't literally, may as well have been written by the State Department. And I suspect in some cases it probably literally was. And it's not just Pluto Press. It's Verso published dirt. Haymarket has published absolute dirt. But my point being that zero accountability, zero recognition. In the case of Pluto, more than once have published Robin Yassin Kassab, who by any definition is a reactionary fascist creep. And this guy was being pushed as the voice on the left to listen to on Syria.
Idris Ahmed writing for the LARB, like it's the loons, Oz fucking Katerji.
Yeah, and we know, and I will stop, but we know these people were coordinating directly with intelligence services, and that we know what they were. They were running the media side of this war, and in some cases they still are. And you still have supposedly serious people engaging with them in good faith. And I think that was one of the most. I will stop, because if I don't stop soon, I won't. But one of the most painful things for me about Syria and about the way it went down is the realization that so many people, including some Palestinians, it has to be said, could witness a year and a half of genocide and still not get it, still not join the dots. Like, it was almost so obvious, it's unbelievable. They signed the ceasefire, the next day it happens in Syria. Like, it was so obvious. And, as Patrick Higgins says in the interview I mentioned, the loss of Syria as, not always perfect, but the loss of Syria as a state that supports the Palestinian resistance and has contiguous land borders with, with the area, unlike Iran, for example, which obviously gives limitations to its role, that puts the whole resistance movement historically into kind of uncharted waters. Syria has pretty much for decades been there. I won't get started on the strategic implications, because that's a whole other thing, but I just wish people would open their eyes and be brave as well, and not give in to these fucking bullies calling people acidists still, even after he's gone, we're still acidists apparently. Anyway, rant over. Thank you for allowing me.
Of course, Louis. No, that was good. We'll come back to that. We'll put a pin in that for now. Alex, how you doing?
Well, I think Nora and Louis said everything. I don't know that I need to add anything more to that. That was, yeah. I mean, that's the anger that I have felt the last 2 months over these chinless gringo experts still talking about framing the issue now as pro-Assadist. I mean, that guy left. He's gone. Like, honestly, that's like a question I have. Are these the resistance against the Al Qaeda state? Where is who? I want to see evidence that the groups on the coast, what they're fighting for is to return a guy who fled. But that's what the listers of the world are telling us, right? Everything's being framed as pro-Assad, and it's the framing. And then, I mean, this, like you said, Louis, it's part of the it's the media side of a war, and this is why narratives matter, and this is why framing something matters a lot. And framing the way Lister does, framing these groups on the coast that are engaged in self-defense, armed self-defense against ethnic cleansing, by being framed, the work that it does to frame them as pro-Assad. And again, the first time I saw this motherfucker, like frame it this way, I'm like, it's exact. We know what the purpose of it is to delegitimize the efforts of these communities to defend themselves against horrible Al Qaeda terrorists from not just beyond, like from Chechnya, from Uzbekistan, from all these countries, right? Like not even from Syria, but they're being framed in this way that completely delegitimizes the ability of them to fight to survive. It's just so enraging. And that's just, as both Nora and Louis mentioned, right? This is just broader what we've witnessed in the last 15, 16, 17 months. The way that people's ability to defend themselves against genocide is framed in a way that the purpose of which is to delegitimize their resistance, to delegitimize their very ability to survive, to fight back against a genocidal regime that's bent on their destruction. And that's, I mean, I think every time we've done these, I say that I just feel rage. And it is, I just feel constant rage. I feel constant rage that, and this is something that Elmer talks about on EI, is what Israel couldn't accomplish on the ground militarily, they use ceasefires or free fires to accomplish those goals, right? The cowardice involved in this move, it only works because they have the support of the US and the West. The idea that we're now going into a moment in Gaza where it's a quote unquote quiet genocide, right? They're just going to starve these people to death because they couldn't, under the auspices of a supposed ceasefire that they agreed to, but they decided not to follow because they never have to follow it. Their attempt is to quietly starve out a population because, again, they used the cover of a ceasefire to accomplish what they couldn't accomplish on the ground militarily. I can't even, it makes me so angry. It's the level of cowardice that involves just enrages me. I don't even know how to put it into words. And that supersedes any type of fear that I have because of the way things are developing here on the ground, right? Like we've seen, at my university, we've received information that we're on some sort of list where we could have ICE raids. Where there's also going to be, we're on another list of public universities that supposedly engaged in protecting anti-Semitism, and that's going to have all sorts of repercussions on the ground. We see what's happening to people like Mahmoud Khalil or this white dude Fabian Schmidt, who essentially they did like a water torture on this guy to get him to renounce his green card when he came back from Europe and flew into Logan Airport in Boston to be back with his American family. Which is the description of the torture he suffered at the hands of ICE agents is like war on terror shit. What's happening to scholars like Mamadou Tal or Halaya Doutaghi, like this, I mean, we keep saying the imperial boomerang's coming home, that there is that aspect to it. Part of me is just like, Jeremiah Wright saying, and this is like what my mom says too. My mom's like, man, these gringos have so much stuff that they have to pay for. And I agree with it, but like, it sucks when you're living in it, right? Like, it's a different situation when you're like, okay, well, yeah, it's going to hit us in the face. So what do we do about it? And this both with Nora and Louis, you guys were saying about being brave and this is the moment to be brave, because this is the moment to stop the shit that's happening abroad and within the belly of the beast that is the United States. I brought this up a lot, but I bring it up a lot because he was right. As Gustavo Petro was right when he gave that speech at COP December 2023, when he said Gaza was the rehearsal and we a dress rehearsal for what we're going to see at home. And like you read that entire speech about how these Western countries had let Hitler into their middle class homes and turned into fascistic anti-migrant populations. He was right, and now we're just seeing it, right? And the last thing I'll mention that enrages me is to see people within the U.S. see this happening. You know, political commentators, people within the Democratic Party, and saying, "Well, this is what you guys voted for. So we told you this was going to happen," and like as if the previous administration did not just set everything up, did not just roll out the red carpet for what we're seeing in Gaza, for what we're seeing in Syria, for what we're seeing in Lebanon, with what we're seeing in Yemen right now. And I don't know if you guys saw those ridiculous pictures that the White House posted of Trump, the most, horrific physical specimen I've seen in my lifetime, sitting there with a MAGA cap that he himself signed for some reason, wearing and watching them bomb innocent people in Yemen. And then in the near future, it might be Iran as well. And then to have people here in the US saying, well, this is what you guys voted for or didn't vote for because you guys called him Genocide Joe. And that's just not, it's enraging to the point where it drives me mad. And I just kind of have to just like step away for a little bit. But again, this is not the moment to step away. I think this is the moment where this more than ever, like, I think we have to keep speaking out and be brave, as Louis said, and not letting these people within the belly of the beast get away with all this shit, which is a thoroughly bipartisan project. But it's scary times, and talking to you guys in our chats with other chat groups, talking to people who are organizing, talking to people who are involved with asylum cases, community organizations. That's the shit that's getting me through it. And I think I think that's what we're going to continue to need as we get through this time of monsters.
Joe, how you doing, man? You're muted, Joe.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm getting through. It's scary times. They're trying to make us scared, so that's the thing to keep in mind. They want us to be scared because they've lost the argument.
There's always something going
Mikey,
on.
why don't you go and we'll come back to Joe.
Shit fucking sucks right now. Everywhere. But especially in the U.S. Imperial Core. Speaking from one of its outposts. Just yeah, for real. I feel like things are kind of back to a certain kind of status quo that I think Al-Aqsa flood like broke irreparably, and I think even though those conditions are back, I think the one thing to be optimistic about is like you can't unsee that sight, right? After you've seen it. So that's one thing to look forward to. But yeah, I think what Alex pointed out, that kind of those ceasefire conditions that Israel has returned to, the ceasefire where people are dying in droves every single day and being starved quite intentionally and openly, is back. And it kind of reminds me of back in, like, this is kind of a personal story, back in 2018 when I was like a left liberal, just getting into socialist politics. In our DSA chapter, I helped to co-write this collective letter, basically pleading for AOC while she was in town in Honolulu to get a better stated position on Palestine, and I called it a slow motion genocide back then, and that she needed to acknowledge that, and that Israel didn't have like a right to protect itself while they're engaged in a slow motion genocide, let alone a right to exist. And of course, her position only got worse, even though she assured us she would look into this after we gave her that letter. And I think the reason I'm kind of reminded of that letter and that wording is that, you know, I think it's one of the things that Israel actually excels at. They're definitely not good at actually engaging in a ground war, clearly, especially when you look at back at their own analysis of what happened on that day, right? Where like the I can't remember if this was on October 7th. Yeah, I think it was, like, where the Golani Brigade actually like hid in the cafeteria and ended up having to be saved by others. Like they only excel at that kind of like genocidal siege mentality. So they're happy to stay in this kind of default zone. But I think it's going to be a lot harder, because even now that it's back down to this trickle, uh, I think it's gonna be a lot harder for liberals to kind of seize on this narrative when the resistance actually does, respond, that they're breaking the ceasefire, right? Because too many people are paying attention now. Too many people know that from day one, Israel, as they always do, broke the ceasefire conditions first. So I guess that's one other thing to look forward to. And yeah, and going back to just what having to deal with all that bullshit of being from liberals in particular being like, well, this is what you voted for, right? Like, first, number one, none of us fucking voted for Donald Trump, right? We just also didn't vote for the other genocidal lunatic. And two, I think that uh, I think what a lot of liberals neglect to mention is the reason that we didn't vote for Biden, uh, Biden part two. What did he say to Harris? Like, uh, not no, yeah, no daylight, kid. That whole thing, like I think it really speaks to the fact that also he was so protective of his legacy, which was basically no daylight from any Republican genocidaire, right? And when you look at what's happening now, like this fascist crackdown, the ICE deportation mechanism, now being connected to the anti-speech, anti-pro-Palestinian movement that's exploded in this country. Biden set the stage for all of that, right? I mean, I think he deported more people than Donald Trump did during his term, right? He was the deportation king, right? And so he was connecting those dots as well during his term. He set the stage. He didn't just capitulate to Trump. He extended a lot of Trump era policies, and so I think it is very much the case that liberal Democrats in the U.S. like are getting what they voted for in every sense.
Yeah, sorry, before a blender goes off again. Yeah, I think the key point there, following up on what Mikey said, is that the Democrats basically threw the election. And as far as I'm concerned, they threw the election because it was a higher priority to continue the genocide. It was obvious from I wrote a piece about this, and people have come out. The polls that have come out since I wrote that piece have even become clearer that they threw the election to keep the genocide going. Their base was much more likely to punish them than the Republican base was to punish Trump over the gender. I mean, there were anti people in the Trump camp or in the Republican camp who didn't like, were against Israel, but it was much larger among Democratic voters. It was obvious that the election was at all close. They were going to blow it just based on the genocide alone, and they didn't care, and they did it anyway. So just based on that alone, they have this whole thing about, well, how dare you enable Trump? That's them. That's on them, and nobody should fall for that for a second. I mean, every single Democratic Party senator voted to confirm Marco Rubio, who's leading the charge against to just basically cancel the rights of green card holders to have political opinions that they don't like. It's just, but I think, like I was trying to say earlier, is that this drive to make us all afraid, and they are obviously trying to make us all very afraid, is because they know they've lost the argument, and they have to resort to that. I mean, here in Canada, Nora, you interviewed Yves Zengler. He's not like the equivalent of a green collar. He's a Canadian-born activist. And he had to spend 5 days in jail just to win the right to talk about the fact that some freak of a Zionist, this Dahlia Kurtz, who doesn't want her name mentioned, so remember that name, Dahlia Kurtz. She had him arrested because she claimed he was harassing her on Twitter by replying to her racist tweets, saying, "Hey, why are you being such a genocidal racist?" And she worked with a law firm linked to the Conservative Party here in Canada, and she got Yves the police to reinvestigate a case that they already dropped because it was ridiculous. But they took it up again, obviously, because there was political influence now, pressuring them, and they got him arrested for 5 days. And that's here in Canada. And he's not a green card. He's not an immigrant. He's a Canadian-born person. They're going after people in a very obvious way, trying to make us all afraid. So yeah, it's up to, as Louis said, it's up to us not to be afraid as much as we can. Just speak our minds. Just call it the way we see it. And that's that's what we need to do. And obviously it does have an impact. Otherwise, why would they be going after us, right? Why would they be trying to make everyone afraid to say, yeah? And like for example, Mahmoud Halil, he didn't say he doesn't support Hamas. Doesn't say he supports. And from everything I've understand, is that he's pretty much a very so-called moderate, right? And they're still going after him. So it's not going to protect you to be just anti-genocide, but not support Hamas or not support armed resistance. It's not going to protect you. They're going to go after you anyway because they want everybody to be afraid. So yeah, it's up to us not to be afraid, and just keep speaking out as much as we can. And it has an impact. It has an impact, and we just got to keep going.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everyone. Those are I feel kind of burdened right now because I don't I mean, yeah, I did an hour and a half episode for my own show. I just put it behind the paywall for now. I'll unlock part of it, at least I think, on Syria with William Van Wagenen. He's a writer for The Cradle and investigative journalist, and Syria obsessive. And I did a lot of ranting then about how the model of the Syria war will be for the model of the future. Like, this was the most elaborate dirty war of all time. It was the biggest psyop of all time. It was the biggest like comprador. Like when you look up compradorism in whatever future encyclopedia we have, there'll be a picture of like the Syrian Gusanos holding up Joe Wilson from the CIA on their shoulders, chanting in Arabic. I mean, we have reached peak imperialism, guys. We have reached peak Western imperialism, and it just so happens to be in the middle of its decline, right? So they are in, like, do you remember there was, this is a deep stupid reference, but I'm sorry, it's in my brain and it's stuck there. But the World Wrestling Federation in like the early 90s had a
I
fake.
knew you were going to say wrestling.
No, it's better.
It was
It's
gonna be a
even
wrestling
worse.
reference.
No, it's even worse, Louis, because that was Trump won. We made the wrestling analogies. Now it's even worse. We are now at I think he called it the International Bodybuilding Federation. Vince McMahon for like a year got these roided up freaks, and they called it like bodybuilding, and it was just like they were human monsters, and they were just flexing and covered in oil all day long. The whole thing went belly up because they just so happened to start testing for roids as like the controversy went up. But I think of that moment of like, this is American power that we're watching right now, that it's like fully roided out. Wolverine took the like special sauce thing directly into his chest, and he's like killing as many people as he can. And he has a goon named Zionism as like one of his main agents that like is tasked with being like the psychotic force in like the world's most sensitive geostrategic region for energy, money, finance, whatever. That we're watching this in full blown utter rampage. And this is what imperial decline looks like. Like we are in the eye of the storm of imperial decline, like going after Mahmoud Khalil, like just low. I mean, a number of like just doing like the guy. Like if you think about it, like the only reason they're doing it is just red meat to their base. Like that's it. It's just that's the expression. That's the for people who don't know. This is like an American expression for whatever for like politicians. They just throw some, they throw some little lolly to their stupid followers who eat it up. And so it not only is it red meat to his stupid chud base, but it's also pleasing his Zionist like underwriters and goons, right? Like it's a perfect like you can't lose. You cannot lose. And then they have like this Cuban Gusano who's the face of this foreign policy, right? But this is I keep thinking about this over and over again. Like American decline is this is the stupidest empire to ever exist. So imagine how stupid its decline is going to be. And we don't need to imagine it. We're watching it. We're living it. They are picking a trade war with their two biggest allies, their two biggest trading partners. Like who's the third one? China, of course. Well, there's that one too. Yeah. Well, that war is new, but like this new escalation with Canada and Mexico, like this is utterly like destroying the economic base of their own country. I mean, they are like punching themselves in the nuts economically to flex on their enemies. Like this is where we've reached, and unfortunately, Gaza is one of the most violent front lines of U.S. imperial decline. It's a theater of U.S. imperial decline. And Syria became one. They tried to make Yemen one and failed, making it even harder for them, incidentally. So I try in these moments to kind of adopt a more global outlook that like I do the Iranian uncle thing, which is, we're a country of 5,000 years. We've been around forever. We're not going anywhere. We're a real country. We're not a fake little entity full of Polish and Brooklynites and like, London losers. Like we are a real country filled with tens of millions of real people. So I don't think in terms of the end of our civilization, but I do think about the fact that there have been iterations of this moment in the past of like what feels like the barbarians are at the gates. I mean, and not just Iranians. This is obviously like a kind of global story, and sometimes those barbarians overrun you, sometimes you overrun the barbarians, and sometimes it's like a weird stalemate between the two. But the wider story here is in the entire like the entire axis of this or whatever what's the thing that a wheel sits on, I forget, an axle. Like this axle is American, and this axle is falling apart, and it won't. And the Zionists are doing everything they can to extract every morsel of strategic benefit they can from this dead beast, to the point of like smashing even their most elite U.S. institutions just to flex at this point. Like there's no strategic benefit to going after Mahmoud Khalil. It's just flexing. It's just like, I mean, yeah, there is the benefit of like the social thing of, oh, don't speak up, but I want to kick this out at this point and sort of ask a wider question. This relates to Syria, obviously, but what is and this relates to our work in this show and my work and all of your work as media people in different realms. But what is the role of what used to be called by stupid liberals, mind you, the public sphere, like, or the media sphere, we call it now, or the intellectual sphere, like the cultural sphere, whatever you want to call it. Like, what is its purpose? And I believe that liberals want to think that it's this like this open pit fight. It's like this kind of wrestling match between different pugilists and the more reasonable and logical winner. And this is also a Chud's thing too, but ultimately we know that like these venues are all owned by private venues. They stack the competition. They like have people who are basically on the same side pretending to fight each other, and like this is part of a game. And so I ask you guys, like, we are obviously outsiders to this. We are marginal figures. We are freaks running a podcast and little websites and like trying to do what we do. And the fact that they come after people like us, and they've already come after people at, at EI, and like we remember, like we know what they did to ASA. They're probably going to start. Who knows? They're probably going to start in Canada on clamping down on podcasts, I'm sure. and even I'm also hosted in the US. Not that I should give them any ideas, but this is not. This is we should not expect to not be drawn into this. Like this decline won't be saved by any of our positions. And what you guys have been saying before all this is that yeah, it doesn't matter if you speak up or not. Like the death machine is coming for you, and the Canadians here have responded to like US, this trade war with like the most pathetic nationalism instead of a serious conversation of what does it mean to be a vassal, a resource vassal of the world's most violent empire to have ever existed, which is reaching its apogee as we speak. And the 40 years of monopolar dominance that it enjoyed are coming to an end and have ended basically. And instead of like going gracefully into this good night, it's deciding to light the entire planet on fire. And so all these different fires that like looked separate, all of a sudden they look together. They look like it's just one big raging arson, from Ukraine to Afghanistan. I mean, we are watching a death machine. We are watching like European settler colonialism go through like a flailing death. Its American sort of like bastard child is now in its like final stages. It's like rotting. It's going to be a rotting corpse soon. And I couldn't be happier for that day to come. But all of us are deeply integrated in it. So I guess to go back to that question, then what is the role of words?
I mean, I think that's a question that I ask myself a million times a day in different ways. Like, what's the point of the public sphere? What's in my own work, like what's the point of continuing to do what I do? Every week I write a news report and I choose what goes in it, and I deliver it, and then it's out there, and I do it again the next week, and the news gets worse. It never gets better. So what's the point? I mean, I think about journalists and media makers and storytellers, historians, who have also done that type of work over centuries, and it's so that the enemy can't be the only recorder of the history that it wants to write. It's the public sphere. The work that we all do is to keep documenting and to not let the enemy have the last word. No matter if we're in this death spiral at the end of empire. We have to hold on to the last shreds of humanity that we can. We have to, there's that old adage, right? Like there's more of us than there are of them. And for every, people's movement, anywhere around the world in so many different contexts, the ones in power have always tried to convince, the general mass of people that they are powerless. And I think that the work that we all do in this public sphere is about reminding ourselves and each other that we aren't powerless, that the enemy does not get to dictate the stories that we tell, and the history that we live through and that we help each other live through, and the grief that we carry. And I mean, I'm just thinking about Louis' story at the very beginning of being able to mourn somebody, and the absolute privilege that is, to be able to do that, and how that has been stripped away from hundreds of thousands, millions of people in Gaza alone, let alone, Syria and Yemen and these sites of imperial decay and violence. And I think that is part of like affirming our own humanity, of reminding ourselves and each other that 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 what people have experienced is real. And as much as, the enemy wants to make us forget or make us distracted or make us, too exhausted to deal. And, this is what liberals, I think, are so good at, is like, oh, I just can't, or they take, I'm seeing all these, so it's just like so despicable. All of these protests outside of Tesla dealerships, and like, here in the Bay Area, like Walnut Creek, California, which we call East Caucasia. It's like, it's just mostly, rich white people who live there, who fled, the urban centers, because they wanted a white picket fence and white people to be around. And all of these boomers in their like stupid, remember the fucking pink pussy hats? Like they've all got them back on again. And they're showing up, on a Sunday morning in front of Tesla dealerships with these stupid ass signs, doing like coordinated dances and having fun and, singing. And I'm like, this is what they think activism is. This is what they think resistance is. That the liberal class has been so like, it's not just brainwashed. It's like lobotomized. And so our role, and I, like the physical revulsion that I feel when I see those kinds of protests, right? Because they are not protests, they're performances. It just, and that I don't know where I'm going with this, but like it basically kind of makes my, it kind of like directs my rage into like, no, we part of, they're also the enemy. That liberalism is also the enemy, and we have to keep holding their feet to the fire, no matter if they feel it or not. We can't let them also write a history that says that they were the ones opposing this. Like everyone on this call has said today, the Democrats, the liberals set this in motion. They underwrote this. This is the world that they created. And so I think for us, it's our responsibility to keep proving otherwise, and to remain like this internationalist, kind of like, wrench in the gears sort of thing, as much as we can and as bravely as we can. And I go back and forth. Like, is it worth like, but we're losing, but we're not, but we have to keep doing it.
Louis, I know you have to go, so why don't you let's hear your answer.
One kind of just specific thing came to my mind to your original, where you first started. And I think at times me and you have disagreed a little bit, and I think occasionally you can wander into slightly nihilistic, nothing fucking matters. What the fuck are we doing? I know you don't think that, but sometimes it comes across like that, which we all feel at times, obviously. But I think the thing that, and I felt this massively with regards to Syria over the last few months, and just the powerlessness of not being able to explain and enlighten enough people about what is actually happening, and that being very painful. But I think the thing that, I don't know if consoles is the right word, but tells me that it's still worthwhile to do whatever we are able to do in whatever way we can, is because of the sheer energy, time, money, coordination, creativity that is put into propagating the narratives that we're fighting. if they didn't have to do that, they wouldn't do it. They have to do it because of the efforts of people like us and so many others. It's not even about us. And again, that's something that Syria taught me, just the sheer depth and range of ways in which they are lying to and tricking people, essentially, whether it's giving an Oscar to the fucking white helmets. Where it's just an absurd example, but that happened. There are so many levels of it, and there are people whose jobs it is to spread this shit, and they need to pay people to do it, because otherwise people won't believe it. People have to be told the thing you're seeing in front of your face is not what you think it is. They have to do that. And so
I guess my question, though, because I know you have to go, though, but my question is, though, what is the value of people being educated when our governments don't care about us, when they don't care about anything we say or anything we do, and they would and they say and they would rather shoot us in the heads than anything else? Like, what does it matter what we believe?
well, there's an amazing Parenti quote on this, which maybe you can put in the links, because actually he basically says actually all they do care about is what we think, because otherwise why the fuck would they bother with all this shit? Why would there be so many layers of propaganda to tell us to think otherwise if they didn't care what we think? That's actually all they fucking care about. And obviously in most cases what they want is people not thinking and distracted. And if they are the relatively rare group of people that aren't distracted and they want to get involved, make sure they get involved in a way that ends up reinforcing the very imperialist structures that they think they're opposing. Syria being a prime example of that. They know there are people with consciences. They know there are people who actually care about things happening. And so they generate and they play on that feeling of, oh my God, we've got to do something. This is terrible. And they redirect it into the actual terrible thing that is happening. And yeah, if I was under any illusions, the last 18 months has showed the limitations of, awareness raising or whatever you want to call it. Obviously, I'm not naive about that, but I see myself, I see, to use the example of Syria, the bit that I can do to counter these fucking despicable propagandists, whether they are just paid up mercenaries or just ignorant, deluded people, whilst they're still doing their part, I have to try and push back against that. And it's not enough, and we are isolated and we are marginalized, but it's all we've got at the moment. And on that note, I have to leave. Much love to all of you.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Louis.
It's good to be
It's
back.
good to hear
Take care,
from you,
everyone.
buddy. Alex, why don't you go since we're doing the clockwise thing?
Well, as Jürgen Habermas argues about the public sphere, fuck this shit, man. No, I think Louis right, man. I think there was was it like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Gallup released some sort of like poll that they had done with Americans, and it's like the first time in like 25, 30 years that they've asked this question, that like Israel's popularity is like below 50%, and it's like really low for Democrat. I mean, like that again, that's really like a low baseline, but some of this work is like work in the cultural terrain takes forever, man. It's ant work, and it's really hard to track, and it's really hard to see the immediate consequences and results of it, because for a variety of reasons. One, like as Louis was saying, like the structures and the financial power that our side faces is immense. I mean, it's like asymmetrical, right? It's like this is the type of media work or narrative work that we are all trying to do is asymmetrical warfare to the very extreme, right? Like, so, but we've seen shifts, right? We've seen important shifts at a social level, particularly when it comes to Palestine, that I think does matter. It takes a long time, right, to demonstrate any sort of effect, particularly when like institutions are still captured by the folks that we are fighting against, whether it and ostensibly liberal institutions, right? So like universities and other at this point, I don't even want to say cowardly institutions. They're collaborative institutions. So that kind of stuff matters. And then like the type of like the histories of revolutionary movements that I teach my students for Latin America, like every single one of these revolutionary movements took media seriously because they knew that that was an important terrain on which to fight their struggle. It wasn't just a political or military struggle. There was a media struggle from like the Haitian Revolution to, you know, the Cubans and the Salvadorians and Nicaraguenses setting up their own like pirate radio stations and broadcasting to one, tell the population that these death squad regimes haven't exterminated us. We're still out here in the mountains resisting. And two, this is why we're fighting. And this is what you can get behind. And this is how you, broader population, can like support us and to defeat this, what, you know, whatever particular political configuration is in power at the moment. That stuff matters. So much so that like these death squad regimes committed horrific genocides and massacres to in the specific attempt to try to take out these radio stations, right? So it's, if you want to think about El Salvador, if you Google El Mozote massacre, this horrific massacre, some of that had to do with the fact that the Salvadorian death squad regime was going after the rebel radio station that was communicating really important messages to the Salvadorian population. So as Luis said, the evil side matters to them for a variety of reasons, right? Like there's a potential there. There's a revolutionary potential in literacy, and trying to help people, not just in like feeding content, but in trying to get people how to think critically, right? As a methodology, like how to get folks to be immediately like skeptical of mainstream information, and then how to like critically interrogate the type of messaging that they're receiving. I think that's really important. I mean, I don't know, like my grandfather was a sharecropper who died illiterate, and he knew the value of literacy. He always told the grandkids who had the chance to get higher education, he always stressed that upon us, the power and the value of literacy. And again, that's another thing that all these revolutionary movements did. Once they took power, the first thing they did, literacy campaigns, right? So I think this stuff all is really important. Even though again, we're on the freak side, as you said, Sina, like, but I think there is value in it. This is ant work. This is cultural work. This stuff takes forever. And folks elicit like real risks doing it, as we've seen. So just the fact that folks continue to do this type of important work in the face of it mounting risks, I think is really important. I wanted to say something else in terms of just like online stuff. I mean, part of the way I've been thinking about the Trump administration is that we're being governed by people who are way too online. And this again, so that terrain matters. Like the stuff that Trump and his people are doing is so online, right? So that then has to become a terrain in which we fight back, again, asymmetrically. But I see the policies. They just announced that Trump administration has the power to designate any Venezuelan who's in the country. They can just say they're a member of the Tren de Aragua cartel or gang, and that then justifies their expulsion to the country. They may be expelled, as they announced this morning, to El Salvador because Bukele is allowing the Trump administration to send them, quote unquote, criminals into his horrific, brutal, like dystopian prison system. That shit is that's like very online behavior. Bukele is very online. Trump and his ilk are very online. So if that's the case, and I think that continues to be an important narrative, we try to push back from our little freak spaces.
Yeah, I think building off of what Nora said about like not letting them have the last word. Yeah, I think that's part of the function. You're not even letting them have like the first word, just setting up a narrative as soon as possible, rather than just kind of like responding with a counter-hegemonic narrative. Yeah, because we can't let these fucking weirdos and psychopaths set the narrative. I mean, like Joe mentioned, like Dahlia Kurtz, and like just like I mean, she has these like crazy bug eyes and looks like this deranged, yeah, Raggedy Ann doll come to life. Like these are fucking yeah. We live in a time of monsters, right? And they're the ones trying to set this narrative, and I think, yeah, just always having some
She's a
kind
monster.
of
She's disgusting.
pulse on the narrative before they come out with it. Yeah, because like Alex said, that they are so online to the point where they have a government agency called fucking Doge, right? So they do rely on what people consume online to set their narrative and apparently even enact sweeping policy. So I think there has to be a front on that uh, site as well, on the Hell website.
So I mean, like Trump like rode Twitter to the presidency. I mean, he like bypassed
Yeah,
he
twice.
twice. Like and one time he wasn't even on it. like it's like
Yeah.
the guy, if any, like they say that liberals used social media in 2008 with Obama. It's like, yeah, they used it for the first time. It was the chuds who mastered it in 2016, and they're still the masters of it, to the point where like they've bought up all the sites, and they're stacking the deck with their own fake bot followers that they use for money laundering, obviously, which is like, who is signing up for Twitter? No one's even on Twitter. It's all bots and people like us. Okay, like that's it. Like, remember that article of like Twitter is mostly just heavy users and increasingly and a tiny user base, but mostly it's just bots. Like, we've seen it happen. I don't see any of your tweets. I don't see anybody's.
I
Like,
don't care,
we're all
Sina.
shut.
I'm going to be in my deathbed posting "Children of Men,
Yeah.
Democrats." They will never
Yeah.
take this away from me.
Yes, it doesn't matter.
does
Yeah,
not
like
matter.
they're gonna. Yeah, exactly. I agree. I agree with all of you. Incidentally, to like to keep up the rest of this point. But yeah, we have to be here. I'm not saying stop. I don't ask this question to say like, oh, I'm throwing in the towel. I'm going into tech. No, I'm not saying this. But like, what I'm saying is we the consciousness raising aspect of our work at this point is moot, right? Like, we have an audience of people. They're basically established, where the world knows what's up in Palestine. Like the sides are clear. Everything is clear. Like, there's no, if you're on the fence, you're useless. You're a useless person. You have no political backbone. It's just I guess the question I have is that the political apathy and the sociopathy of our location here in the empire is something that we confront. That the like numbness to the violence that is exported from here is such a huge block on any kind of anti-imperialist work, because it fundamentally, and if any group of people around the world have been successful in overcoming this block, it's Palestinians. And we learn from them how to get around a media blockade, and that's what we learn from. And that's how we have the red triangle stuff. Like, you can draw a line from, like, the PFLP's sort of media office to the red triangle. Like, that's not, like, these aren't things impossible to like note and to like learn from. Now, I guess what I wanted to kind of put out towards the end, I mean, I know we've been going for like an hour and 10 minutes, and Joe, you have to go too, so I'm not wrapping up or anything. But I meant more like something that Louis said about rage. And I thought about, yeah, like, I have so much rage all the time. I'm raging all the time. And I had this rage before 18 months ago, of course. It was definitely there. I'm sure all of us hadn't. And I just realized that, oh, you just have to live with that rage for the rest of your life. You have to, like, it has to sit inside of you like some fucking kombucha mother, Scobie, like, just growing every day, producing this delicious red vinegary sauce inside of me that I need to like spew out into the world in podcast form, because like, this is what I have with my life. This is my training, words, analysis, literacy. I can like, command the languages a little bit here in this issue. It's like, and so, yeah, like, this is what I do. We're stuck. You're like, all of you are stuck with me. We're stuck with each other. But I guess it's more, I asked that question more in terms of like the tenor of our work, because, the Syria lesson is, don't listen to your parents. Don't listen to your elders. If all your elders are saying, oh, Bashar bad, Al-Qaeda good, your elders are the problem, right? And our elders are liberal institutions, right? They're liberal media institutions, academic, cultural institutions who hold themselves up over us as some kind of doting parent that oversees this. And they say, oh, how can we let this go? And we all know that's fake, that the authority of a parent is provided by the child first and foremost. And like we have to designate them as like the big, I'm talking about as adults, I'm not talking about as kids, obviously. This analogy breaks down, but I think more in that, like at a certain point you grow up and you realize that it doesn't matter what the adults are saying, that you have your own brain and you think for yourself. And if the adults yell at you for thinking for yourself, that's on them, that's not on you. And so I guess the story of Syria is I'm never holding my tongue again. I'm going to go after every single righteous liberal who follows me, who says anything. Someone retweets it, I'm going, like, it's done. I'm done being nice. No more, Mr. Nice Guy. Like it's over for nice guy Sina, because yeah, like we watched it happen. We watched a dirty war, the most elaborate dirty war of all time. I will say this until I die. And these people cheered it along, and they helped. They helped sell Al Qaeda as liberators, okay, who are now going around doing the thing that they accused the previous government of doing, right? So we live in an upside down world. Don't listen to anything anyone says to you, because this is like sicko freaks who speak over us, who have the ability to mute us, who can nuke us on our channels, who can demonetize us and not have any kind of consequences. Because like ultimately, like at a certain point, it's the CIA's internet and we're just its guests. But we still have our brains, we still have our voices, we have a network of like freaks and circus clowns and all of us, and we have our networks, and people love us out there and they miss this show. So I'm happy to have you guys back. Joe, you are going to clear us out, and you're going to take us out and say something about why we do this. And also, Nora, please, we demand an update on Kassam. Where is Kassam the kitten? You dropped him in once, and people have been messaging me since and saying, what happened to
He
him?
is a perfect little menace. He is banished from the room right now because all he wants to do is like jump as high as he can onto all the things that I
let him in
carefully. I know. Next time, I promise. But he's doing great. He's doing. He's perfect. He's perfect. He's perfect.
Yeah. So before my dog starts barking, let me just say I'm really glad that social media like Twitter and that didn't exist, 20, 30 years ago, because the stuff I was saying back then is like basically the kind of stuff all the liberals I hate today say, because like Louis said, all they care about is what you think. And if they control what you think, then they control what you do, and they got you, right? I mean, my first political hero was Bertrand Russell. I read Russell up, constantly, and he was working for the fucking CIA, that group, the front group, the Cultural Freedom Group. Yeah, yeah. He was president of that group, and that he was like a total, anti-communist fanatic. Basically, he was terrible in so many ways, and yet he was one of my big heroes. The other big hero I had politically, I discovered him later, was Chomsky. I mean, Chomsky, who said that I can't think of any way to improve on what Obama did in Syria. I mean, and even when he said that, I still kind of, because I admired him for so long, and I didn't want to accept how despicable it was. And then when he went on to later, he called Zelensky a man of great courage and integrity. He just got worse and worse and worse. And then, so yeah, it's a process, right? And they put so much effort in making sure that if you are inclined, like I was, to question things and to kind of be on the left, then they made sure that there were people out there like Russell, like Chomsky, like so many other theorists, who kind of just drag you back into an acceptable place, right? So they put a lot of energy into that. There's that excellent book about the culture of Cold War that talks about all that stuff. And yeah, so there's tremendous energy trying to control what people like me think, and at the same time trying to tell us how insignificant we are and trivial we are. We're not trivial, we're not insignificant, but there's a balance, because obviously you can't be self-satisfied and say, oh, I'm doing great, and I'm exaggerate your own influence and importance, because that's callous and delusional. That's not right either. I remember I once sent an email to Tariq Ali asking him to sign some petition. I can't remember who it was in support of. And he replied to me saying, "Oh, I don't sign petitions because they're a sign of weakness." And I was like, okay. But then I thought to myself later, it's like, well, wait a minute, we are weak. What, are we going to fool them thinking that we're big or something? I mean, like, it's just so stupid, right? Like, we have to be realistic. We have to be grounded. We're not going to be delusional, but we're not going to be demoralize ourselves either. We have to find that right balance. You know, what we do matters, but we can't be delusional and thinking that we're more important than we are, more influential than we are, because we're up against these incredible barriers. So we have to strike the right balance. So that's
Yeah.
my closing thoughts.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
It's a good way to end that. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Nora, Alex, Mikey. This was a good conversation. I missed you guys. I missed this.
Yeah, we should
I
bring
think
it back regularly, I guess.
Yeah, I think the death of Tankie Therapy has been, it was much exaggerated. Yeah, it's back, baby.
is.
Tankie Therapy, we're back. Season 2. We're never going. We're never going away. We're here forever. Okay. Bye, guys. We'll see you soon.